It's great to be back at my alma mater, Drake University, and for the second panel that we've moderated here, and looking forward to a really good discussion. I want to start with Mayor Cownie. Politico just wrote a story how America's dullest city got cool. Forbes rankings. We had a little story about hipsters a couple years ago. Does it get old, the national coverage? Not yet.
Every now and then, but I'll tell you that over the last 12 years that I've had this job, it's changed a lot, and quite frankly, over the number of years that I, have been in business and whatever in Des Moines, just listening to that discussion has changed as the caucuses come through, because you get sort of a snapshot. They do every 3 to 4 years when the next leaders of the free world start presenting themselves here. And Des Moines has changed a lot, especially in the last decade, where downtown's more exciting, more inviting, more places to go, entertainment, places to eat, Des Moines Social Club. I mean, so many different things to do, and people see it. I never thought Des Moines was dull, but then I lived here, and I think that, to the outsiders, maybe it was because they didn't know where to go. Right. But now there's so much going on that it's exciting.
Well, when you and I talked a couple years ago, you said that you really noticed it when national media came in town and they stopped asking to find a hail bay to interview in front of, and they instead wanted to do it in front of, like, in downtown somewhere. I think that's the way you framed it to me.
Actually, it was cornfields and hog lots, but similar.
Well, I want to get a little talk about innovation here. So AOL co-founder Steve Case wrote in the Washington Post recently that really he talked about flyover cities and why innovation is really working there. And he said it was lower cost of living, increased mobility, advancements in technology, local support, and greater access to capital. Why do you think Des Moines fits that mold where there's a lot of growth that we're seeing?
Well, I think Des Moines, we have succeeded in sort of pulling together, rather than siloing residents and businesses and culture and local government, and everybody putting together. Now, local government doesn't create jobs, but we can facilitate discussions and pull people together, and I think businesses have been open to it, not only in Des Moines itself, but our region, if you will, our metro area. And I think that it's opened up not only some government partnerships in ways that we can innovatively help neighborhoods, help businesses do things and expand their employment, but also bring private financing into it, because we'll sort of be a catalyst or a jump start on something, and then if it seems to be a good idea, it's interesting to see the corporate support for so many different things. And that discussion and open collaboration that we've had, I think, has been really, really helpful to overcome some of that and get a lot of things going.
Cool. I want to bring Zach into the conversation. Zach just left a job with the Des Moines Social Club. I know you've told this story a million times. I think it's a good one. I want to talk a little bit about your road trip, if people don't know about the road trip a few years ago and how you chose Des Moines.
A little too early in the morning to talk about road trip. I was living in New York City. I'm originally from outside Philadelphia. I was in New York for about 8 years before I came here. In New York, I ran theater companies and restaurants, and quickly determined that the last thing New York needed was another theater or another restaurant. But I didn't know where I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to be in a smaller place. I was searching for a city that was roughly 500,000 people in the metro, had a downtown that needed to be revitalized or going through revitalization, a place that needed to stress the importance of retention and recruitment of young people, and a place that had an art scene that was not yet established on a national scale but was burgeoning locally. And so I drove to 22 cities around the country. I visited each city for about 3 to 5 days. It was a lot of fun. I met lots of people. Sometimes lots of people talked to me. Other times nobody would talk to me. Ultimately, I chose Des Moines. I didn't know anybody in the state of Iowa when I moved here. This was the fall of '07. And I'm still here. It's been 8 years now.
That's great. And the Des Moines Social Club, I mean, obviously if you live here, you've gone there. It's just a great experience, a lot of fun. And what did I read? It was 25,000 annual visitors, or is that right?
25,000 a month.
A month,
on average.
Wow.
I mean, sometimes lower, sometimes a touch higher. That's an amalgamation of everybody that walks in the doors for social club programming, for the restaurant and coffee shop that we have inside. But it's increased quite a bit. When we first opened in 2009, I think maybe we had 1,000 people a month. And so it's increased dramatically, but it's because there's been literally thousands of people that have helped build what is Des Moines Social Club now, and it wouldn't have worked without all of them.
And I love the way you framed it to me. It was, you know, at some days it's like a professional wrestling next to a sculpting class, next to like a folk, you know, band thing. I mean, it's very diverse in that way.
The goal is always, how do you get two different people who would never otherwise hang out together in the same room at the same time? So most people, when they go out to socialize, they'll go to like-minded places. It's just like voting or where you choose to live. People like to live amongst people that they think the same, and they feel the same, and do the same, and dress the same, and the same. It's part of why I left Brooklyn. I was surrounded entirely by, I lived in Park Slope, and if you know Brooklyn, it's an incredible liberal enclave, which I loved for many years, but at the end of the day, I sat there going, you know, I hear about all these people that don't believe that climate change is real. I don't know any of them. I've never met any of them. Are they made up? I see them on TV. Who are these people, and why do they think this way? I couldn't fathom it. And so I began to say, you know, it's not healthy for me to live in this world. I'm getting one way of thinking just like the people that think opposite of me are. And I wanted to be in a different place. Des Moines is a fantastic place, mostly because it's almost 50-50 politically. And I love that. I've been changed dramatically as a person since I've been here. And that's what I wanted to see happen. So the social club is meant to be a microcosm of that. How do you would never otherwise talk to this person, but you're in the same place at the same time. We've had people that work side by side in cubes at Wells Fargo or Nationwide and have never said more than, you know, hello to each other, and are suddenly in an in-depth conversation with each other because they happen to be there together experiencing something similar. And so it's a long game. The mixing of people is what I think is the most important thing we can do, which is why I enjoy living in a place like Des Moines.
Well, let's talk about politics and bringing more diversity. I'm going to bring in Rob Barron here. Rob and I spoke for a story about why Latinos don't historically have a track record of caucusing, and one of the reasons was that campaigns just do an abysmal job of reaching out to them, but another reason was that Latinos haven't seen Latinos get elected to public office. And you told me that there are 7,000 elected offices in Iowa, and 7 are occupied by Latinos.
Wow.
Well, we're trending up. We're at 14 now.
14.
Yeah,
Are
so
we?
it's
Okay.
a meteoric rise.
Well, tell me about tell me about your new network and
Sure.
and your new initiative to get more Latinos into public office.
Sure, thank you. Well, I appreciate the interest in what we're doing too. It's so a friend and I, Omar Padilla, co-founded something called the Latino Political Network, whose sole goal is to educate and empower Latinos in Iowa to run for office. You got the numbers right. I mean, it's 14 out of 7,500 elective offices in the state are held by Latinos. That's like not even a percentage at this point. And I think when I look around, I feel like I've run. I won, just barely, but it's win's a win. It's all a landslide. But I learned a lot, and I ran from having been in politics for a number of years. I worked for Senator Tom Harkin for 13 years. I grew up in a family that took me to a caucus in 1988 when I was, holy smokes, 8 years old. So I kind of grew up in that type of environment, and I really valued electoral service. And so I feel like I was fortunate in that respect. This was something that I always aspired to do. I always felt there was something honest and right about putting your name on a ballot and serving your community this way. I don't think, though, as Omar and I looked around, we didn't see much of an effort to instill those values and to prepare people to make those runs. So we formed this organization with the idea of going out and kind of I like to talk about like shaving the top off of the learning curve.
Right.
I made a long list of mistakes when I ran, just short enough though that I was able to win. But a lot of folks don't, and if you're one of the 180,000 Latinos in this state, and you don't know one of those 14, you're probably not going to have a very good sounding board and a very good political education before you make that first campaign. And we want folks to be successful. We want them to feel validated in this type of service.
Yeah, 180,000 Latinos, and I don't think people realize what's happening in small towns across the state. And a couple weeks ago, I spent the week going to small town, and we saw communities that are majority Latino now. Some small towns across the state, majority Latino, but there's also a large refugee population in the state, and that's why I wanted to bring in Henny. We spoke about the type of aid that refugees get in this country, and it's pathetic. That's the way you framed it to me, and I think when we talked, you said that we're in crisis mode here, were the words that you used to me. I guess, could you briefly tell us what conditions are the Burmese refugees that you helped leaving, and what sort of aid are they getting once they come to this country?
In Iowa, and first thank you, Matt, for running that story. I mean, that in itself brought so much awareness to what is an invisible and very marginalized population. In Iowa, since 2007, we probably had maybe 1 or 2 refugees from Burmese people living in Iowa. Now we have about 8,000 in the state of Iowa. This has come in the past 5 years. You have a huge influx. Refugees from Burma come from 9 different ethnic groups, 130 sub-ethnic groups, and 100 languages. Our organization, we need at least 12 different interpreters to communicate with our community. Burma has a longest running civil war, so a refugee population, unlike other communities that Iowa have resettled, we have to look at the population based on who they are and their history. They have, on our board, which is an all-refugee board, the average number of years they've been in refugee camps is 16 years. Our president was born and raised in a refugee camp. And then they're so hopeful and so excited to come to the United States, and they're resettled to Iowa. What happens when they get here? Which people may not know is that there's 90 days, 3 months of direct services, and then you're left to be, that's considered self-sufficient. 3 months, I moved here to Iowa, it took me like a year to adjust, I think we're talking about a population where a significant number are pre-literate. One of our board members said, I'd never seen a car before, never seen a car. I come from a place where it's bamboo huts, no electricity, no laws, no rules. Everything is difficult, from reading the mail to leaving the house. So in my advocacy work, I started working with the refugee community from Burma, and I mean, if people knew, and as more and more Iowans know, they themselves also say, this is unacceptable. This is an outrage where basic human needs aren't being met. Someone sits at home without food because they don't know where to go to the food pantry. But if they get to the food pantry, it's food they have no idea how to eat. Community members are eating like pasta, and they're saying it's really, really crunchy because they don't know how to boil it. Our board member who's been here, now 5-6 years, she recently said to me, oh my gosh, I know how to use an oven. And I said, what'd you guys do with those turkeys that were handed out? We gave them away to other people. We don't know how to cook those turkeys. Let's break it down to a community that is not coming to a new culture, but almost coming to like a new planet. You really, they're unfamiliar with Western norms, and so then they're here. And you have populations like Columbus Junction. It's a population of 1,900. Right now, 600 are Hakachin, specific ethnic group. We get calls from all over the state. They say, I'm a social worker and I have a child that's extremely malnourished, and we can't communicate with the parents, or we don't have someone to drive the parents to the hospital. So that's where Embark started. Embark started because I was deeply sad and deeply outraged, and we started with the community. It has to start there.
You should read more about Henny's work. The story, if you want to look it up, is After Refugees Wash Ashore. And it was an interesting time when we published this story because governors started not, refusing Syrian refugees And it's weird because Terry Branstad also said he didn't want refugees, but Iowa was one of the first states to bring in the Vietnamese, the boat people, back in the 70s, and Governor Ray is celebrated for that.
Yeah.
I want to bring you two in this conversation. What does that kind of community bring? I mean, I know there's over 100 languages spoken in Des Moines public schools, 6,000 ELL students. We're talking about innovation and building communities, but obviously you have to provide opportunity for all communities. And so I guess, very briefly, can you just talk what that means for the school district?
Sure. Well, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, it's an opportunity. I'm a Des Moines native, but I was working in Washington for 4 years, and my wife is from Seattle, Washington, and we were coming to a decision. We knew we didn't want to live in DC forever, and we wanted to figure out where we were going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Had a job opportunity to come back here, and we moved back to Des Moines, to the center of Des Moines, not to a suburb, because I want my son, we have a 3-year-old now, I want my son to grow up in a place that looks like the rest of the world. And I want him to be in a community that where he'll learn different languages, and he'll meet people that look differently from him, think differently, act differently, socialize differently. And so, it's a tremendous advantage for me, and I would imagine the same thing for Mayor Cownie in terms of selling Des Moines to folks. On the other side, our needs are more acute. As a school district, our needs, which are sometimes poorly addressed at the state level, are tremendously different than pretty much all of the other 300 school districts in the state, some of whom serve, quite a lot of whom serve fewer kids than we serve in one building in their entire district. So we struggle sometimes with state policy to that respect, but coming back to the point of your question, there's no place I would rather live, there's no place I'd rather raise my son, and I'm fortunate with where Des Moines is and how we embrace folks.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mayor Carney, we're running out of time here, but I wanted to see if have you seen, I know you're involved in democratic politics in the state, have you seen candidates address some of these issues, the innovation that Des Moines has been a leader on, the refugee issues that arise with that? I mean, are these major issues that Des Moines lives every day being talked about?
Absolutely. I mean, we see immigrants coming to Des Moines. We see a total change in the population, whether they're Latinos or they're Asians or whatever. We have to somehow figure out, and I love your program. They come here often without an understanding of what the laws are, what the hours are, whether they can get a job, what they have to do to get there, what the food looks like, where their services. They're surprised that there are some services that are out there. And as we listen to candidates, and not just Democrats or Republicans, because in my office and in Rob's too, we serve everybody. I mean, Democrats, Republicans, no parties, a few socialists, a few communists, a few others, but it doesn't matter. If they have a problem or an issue, if they have to be educated or they have a public safety issue or anything else, we've got to come up with an answer. And so it is a bit of a challenge from time to time, especially when we don't get much help from some other levels of government. We kind of have to do it on our own and without some of that support. But Iowa, as you had pointed out earlier, is always been a welcoming state. I mean, back when we were kids and Governor Ray was welcoming Southeast Asians, not only Vietnamese, but Cambodians and Thai, and into Iowa as they were escaping, their horrible situations. And they came here, and we got to see that even at that time, those many years ago, people coming into an apartment that often they were faith-based sponsored, and they didn't even know how to use a garbage disposal. I'd say, any of the stuff that comes off your plate, just put it in there, and turn it on, and away they go. Well, if it's rice or it's something that you add a lot of water to and it expands, pretty soon you got a problem. But they didn't understand that. but it's an education. Iowans have always been welcoming. We are all immigrants at some point or another, except for the Native Americans, and I think sometimes we forget that. But we try to make Des Moines a welcoming place and work together with the school district, with the county, with the city, with our citizens to try to see what we can do to make people's lives better.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have about 2 minutes left, so if you have some questions, please line up at the mics and we'll get them. Zach, I want to end with you. You have a new job, and I love your title, Vice President of Creative Placemaking. All right? So I would like you just to talk a little bit about your new job. You're trying to bring culture and recreation to struggling downtowns, and what my understanding is struggling downtowns across the state. Very similar to what you did here in Des Moines. And you told, I think it was the Des Moines Register, that adding a coffee shop or an art store in a downtown area does wonders in terms of bringing businesses in and revitalizing a community. I'd love to hear about your new job.
Well, two things. I mean, number one, every small town in the state is competing with, they're all competing with each other. And everybody's trying to lure the big factory or manufacturing plant or a large corporation to move to their town and create a number of jobs, typically over 30. That's not working anymore. And if that does work, it comes with insane amounts of government subsidies and incentives that potentially are not healthy to that town or to our state. And so what are these towns going to do next? If a company is going to move to that town, they have to have something for their employees to do after they're done work. Why would these employees want to go and live in these small towns like Algona or Fort Dodge or Oakland or Coon Rapids or any of these places? There has to be some recreational activity, some kind of culture that they can take part in. Sometimes that means a community center or an art center, that's great. Sometimes it's just retail. Sometimes it's just coffee shops or things like that. But on top of this, and this is where I think the country is headed, 30 years from now, I think rural areas are where the interest is going to be. If you follow the track of innovators or if you follow the track of artists over the history of time, they're always pushed to the fringes of society. They're always pushed to the places that, frankly, are the least expensive. And these days, that's not urban areas. Those are rural areas. And I think that's where things are going to move to over the next 30 years. So how can we start now by building up the infrastructure and creating a pipeline around the state that includes the urban areas and they all can work together? That's what I'm attempting to do. We'll see if it works.
Let's take a question from the audience.
Sure. Jane Armstrong. I'm the director of the Small Business Administration here in Iowa. And I've only been here a year, and I had a very similar route from the East Coast as you did. And there's a lot of great things that we do very well. I've had had the opportunity in my career to work in a lot of states and at the national level on a lot of economic development models. There's so many things that we do really well here in Iowa. I'm very proud to be in Iowa now and to experience some of the different things. But one of the things that we really need to work on, and I want to just get some feedback on this, is on the diversity and inclusiveness issue. So much focuses on employment and just employment and how many people are we hiring, but we're not empowering the business startups for women, minority, and veterans in particular, and also holding some of these corporations accountable on what they're doing in their purchases or their procurement policies with women and minority and veteran-owned businesses as an example. And that's really where a lot of the empowerment will come from with the new business startups, and also showcasing the culture of a lot of the diversity that we have in the community. So I wanted to get a sense of where is the discussion? How do we get this going in Des Moines? Really looking at, instead of just celebrating how many people we're hiring, what are we doing to support those businesses in the community?
Thank you. That's a great question. You want to take it, Henny?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Zach was saying, you put it in the context of refugees. We're not just talking about needs, we're talking about opportunities. Because if you want a stronger community, you start with strong community-based organizations. You know, it could be neighborhood associations, it could be a women's group. And so why don't we have those strong community-based organizations within different minority groups? Why are we doing for and not with? So everything with Embark is the refugee community members. This is their organization. They plan and implement and evaluate with us. It's their priorities. The same thing with immigrants. Immigrants are the ones, and refugees are the ones that are going to start businesses. You know, historically, they can revitalize towns. I have small towns in Denison and Marshalltown and Storm Lake that says we welcome refugees because they're the ones buying the houses. They have purchasing power, and so we want to see a long game where there's integration and there's true inclusion, rather than we're here to provide here and here the direct services. Just, you know, and then there we go. We're going to work in partnership. So all of our programs is based on like a model where mainstream community members and refugees work together. So I don't know if I addressed that question.
Zach, do you
Yeah,
address any of this
people,
in your program?
we're never for lack of ideas. If you talk to anybody everybody has ideas. Everybody wants to do something. Most people simply don't do it because they're tied down to something. A lot of young people don't go off and try to innovate, mostly because they used to not have health care. And so they'd stay at their jobs because they had to have that safety net. Nowadays that's changing, which is wonderful, but we're still not there yet. So, you know, with the people that you're trying to serve, we come from a society that's based on the big win. We want the giant company to come, like you were saying, all these jobs to be created. And yes, we do want that. But we're not just saying only that, we're saying that plus this. All people with ideas and innovators, no matter where they come from or what ethnicity they are, they all lack the same basic things. They lack funding, they lack space, and they lack infrastructure. And if we can provide those three things in whatever size community, because you can, that will get them motivated. And I refuse to accept that the answer is, well, the money isn't out there. Of course the money's out there. The money is always out there. We are the richest country in the world. The money is out there. Sometimes it takes a very long time to find, but it's absolutely there. And starting, as I'm sure you are, with these groups and getting people together, they'll tell you exactly what they need. But being their champion and going out and finding it and not using the same old ideas of, well, we have to go through this track or apply for this grant or so forth. Go and straight up ask. Corporations are incentivized to make their cities better because they're trying to attract top talent to move to their towns to work for them. And so sometimes that means an innovation at what they would think is a smaller level could grow up and make their city cool or interesting. That's in their best interest. And so sometimes you're not going to find the funding from grants or foundations or national grants or things like that, which take a very long time to do and lots of red tape. Instead, go ask the companies. They are very helpful. Ask people in the neighborhood that live there. Everybody wants to help make that happen. We just have to get innovative with how we approach it.
Mayor Cownie?
Well, real quickly, I agree with everything that's been said here, but Des Moines, we've tried to get our arms around sort of a placemaking idea, because we've discovered that a little different, it seems, than what Zach was saying. We're seeing more people wanting to live downtown and live in an urban area, millennials that don't even have driver's license and don't own cars. And they're taking either mass transit or walking to work in downtown. We've got 80,000 people working downtown, and we've got to make downtown and the whole city a place where people want to live. What are without having to spend money for it, what are the things that we can do? So we've got bike paths, we've got walking paths, we got the river walk, we've got Gray's Lake, we've got the waterworks, we've got 78 parks in and around Des Moines, we've got a sculpture garden. We've got places that make this really special, a place where people want to live. And when people look at locating businesses, they decide, one of the reasons they locate a business, do I want to live there? And we're discovering that Des Moines is one of those places that people want to live, and we're getting quite a lot of accolades for it. And quite frankly, we're seeing the downtown grow by leaps and bounds more than some of these small towns. I mean, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we had 1,500, 2,000 people living downtown. Now we're at 10, and it's growing, and we're filling them up as quickly as possible.
And the root, though, of the question about opportunity, I mean, there's an incredible achievement gap in the state of Iowa.
Yep.
in terms of people of color. Latino 8th graders are 19% proficient in reading and math. Black children are 13% proficient in reading, 8% in math. The gap is incredible. And you probably are dealing with this on a daily basis with the school board.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm dealing with it from the perspective of a community that's 75% free and reduced price lunch eligible. It's 55% students of color. So when I mentioned earlier that we deal with education much differently than the rest of the state does, it's reflected in those statistics. I think everything that my panelists to the right of me, I agree with. I mean, there's tremendous opportunity here. There's tremendous opportunity for small businesses, no matter who wants to lead those. But none of it works if we're not successful in educating their kids, taking care of their health care, giving them a safe place to live. And that's, I'm rather soft-hearted in that respect, but ultimately what it comes down to is providing the supports and then getting out of their way to a certain extent. I've been reading this book lately about organizing, and it comes back to this iron rule of organizing, which is don't ever do for anyone else what they can do for themselves. You want to build the structures, you want to provide the environment, and then you want to empower folks to be able to change that. The statistics you reference, we're not doing enough to empower people right now. And we need to fix this. We're a very rich community in a lot of respects, but we're failing folks.
Very briefly, our last question. Yeah.
Claudia Thrain. One of the things that I've been hearing, even with the other panel and this panel, is that the disconnection between the government at the local, state, and federal level with the people, everyday people. Talking about minorities, I'm a Latina, I moved here 15 years ago. I've seen that over and over, there is they just don't connect with us. They think the people with money and with the power, they decide what my community needs or the refugee community need. They deciding on their own perspective, they give us money, but not the right way. So that's why there's a failure. Right. Instead of doing something, bring us to the table and let us make those decisions too, because those are important to our community. Just to give you an example, in an area where mostly are Latinos, they put a basketball park. Let me tell you, we play soccer. I mean, so that's the reality. Guess what? That's a failure. So you need to bring the people, the most interested on, to the table. Yeah. Don't decide for us.
Thank you. The very, very brief final word, Mayor.
Well, to your question, I absolutely agree. We want community involvement, all of our community, not just some of our community. And it is for that reason, I and a lot of my city council members go out to neighborhood meetings, so I encourage you to go to neighborhood meetings. If you have a group of Latinos or others that you think that we ought to meet with, call our office. We'll meet. We have a comprehensive plan. We call it Plan DSM that we are doing. We're going to meet actually this Thursday at the library. Please come. Tell us what your concerns are, your thoughts, your dreams, your aspirations. Let's include it in the plan, but I appreciate your point, and we want you involved.
Yeah, well, Henny, you want to, 30 seconds, I guess?
Okay, I would like the community to realize how important it is to bring people who are in poverty and are marginalized and help them raise their voice. We need support to get to the place where we can organize and build leadership. There are no leadership classes for emerging leaders. When we started Embark and we asked, can we get some help with building a nonprofit? We're a board of refugees. We don't have human capital, social capital. We have no time because it's crisis oriented. It took an enormous amount of effort of ordinary people doing really, really extraordinary things to get that done. So yes, absolutely, we need to be at the table, but we also need support to be there.
Great. This was a fantastic conversation. My thanks to Zach, Henny, Mayor Cownie, Rob. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening.